Calabash is one of those landmark events where you're like, well, we have to get ready for Calabash, right? And Calabash has been such a catalyst for growth, particularly of the Airbnb and the smaller accommodations in Treasure Beach. Cottage that was owned by the Putnam family, one of the largest literary publishing companies in the world. Our own family history, of course, with How Did They Come and Power Game and Kane. You know, there were fundraisers that were done for us in jazz clubs in New Orleans, on vineyards in Cape Cod, in marathons in Berlin, in walkathons in London, in pickleball and squash tournaments right here in Kingston. And you know, sometimes you don't know what something means until you almost lose it. And I must say that Calabash is one of those landmark events where you're like, well, we have to get ready for Calabash, right? And Calabash has been such a catalyst for growth, particularly of the Airbnb and the smaller accommodations in Treasure Beach. And it would probably be weird for you to hear from a hotelier that one of the prides of last two Calabashes were that we started to notice tents popping up on the beaches in Treasure Beach. So that shows you that, yes, you know, people want to come to Treasure Beach. And my phone is ringing off the hook. Where can we stay? Where can we stay? You know, one other thing I wanted to highlight, because, you know, these things can be taken for granted, is that, you know, Marlon James, who started at Calabash, coming to Calabash before he even had anything published. I want to highlight that $10 million was spent in this very city between last Calabash and this Calabash. Forget Millie Black, and I really want to big up Marlon for that.
Information. It's called A Public Spectacle. They're in London. It's about 1873. The walk was not long, but never in Mrs. Touché's life had she ever experienced anything like it. The Lady Godiva couldn't have attracted more attention. At the coffee stalls, queues of people turned to stare. A dozen heads whipped round on the omnibus. Taxi drivers revolved on their boxes to examine from behind what had already been scrutinised from the front. Some recognised Bogle and cried out his name. "Oi, Bogle! We believe you, Bogle! Send our regards to Sir Roger." But most people mistook the three of them for a family of some kind. A not unknown sight in the slums, so Eliza imagined, but surely rarely to be seen promenading through town. Being English people, most of their commentary was quiet, poisonous, patient. She strained to hear it, but could never catch it distinctly. She'd already passed half a yard in front before the speakers began. But children, having fewer scruples, laughed openly, and could be heard asking each other what happened if you gave an Ethiopian a bath, or how such woolly hair might feel in your hands, or advising each other on defense against cannibals. It would have been Mrs. Touché's inclination to fill the air with chatter, but neither Bogle nor his son said a word. So they walked in silence until they reached a likely chop house, through the window of which Mrs. Touché could see at least one respectable-looking woman dining. Here the son Henry took his leave, and a startled doorman led the party of two to a booth behind a pillar. Very much to learn how you came to be in such an unusual situation. Your whole history would be of interest, far beyond the narrow scope of what we've heard in the courtroom. What was your life in New South Wales, for example, or in Jamaica? We learned very little of our Caribbean possessions since the terrible trade ended. Alas, Mrs. Touché, that trade is also a part of my history. He spoke distantly, looking past her towards the kitchens. A set of candlesticks sat between them. He picked one up, weighing it in his hands. "Do you suppose they serve pork chops here?" "Oh, they're famous for their chops, Mr. Bogle. murmured Mrs. Touche, and was quiet for a moment. Had she ever gone without a meal, even once, in her whole life? Well, I am fond of chops. Well, then we will have them, Mr. Bogle. Do you think you might like to tell me something of your story? I mean, tell me something of your life. Mr. Bogle sighed, put down the candlestick, and seemed to come back to the table, back to the present moment, from a place far away. And how it was continued and how it ended. So part of the novel was I wanted to stick closely to the facts because they're really interesting. It's interesting how a 400-year institution made such an extraordinary amount of money for the little island I was born on. And it's also interesting that from the very beginning there were mass movements, working class movements, that made an alliance in their mind between the situation of poor workers in Manchester and Liverpool, in London, and the situation across the sea. There were always movements in England, and also, you know, abolitionist ladies having their busybody teas. But that to me was like a present question. If I keep strictly to the facts, then I can learn something about the present. Like if I can find out how you end a business that makes so much money, I might also know how to deal with massive problems like climate change, for example. And I felt what I learned as I was researching the novel is that the answer is it takes all hands on deck. It takes all kinds of action. So in the case of this book, you see at the extreme end the slaves revolting in Jamaica, which they did over and over again. You see the polite lady abolitionists. You see the working class movements, you see the petitions sent to Parliament, you see the politicians themselves. You realize that this is an action that involves every level of society in order for something to happen. Because when you're making that much money, nobody gives up that much money easily. So it really took a monumental effort. So it was both a really hard and sad book to research, but also a kind of optimistic one, because I feel like in the past 5 years or so, particularly for young people, the main feeling is that nothing can change, nothing can happen. And going back to the 19th century was to remind myself, oh yes, things can change, things do happen.